Welcome back to Morning Break, and this week's Monday Motivations brought to you by Gates Brain Health. Dr. Randall Gates himself back with us today. He is a board-certified chiropractic neurologist and chiropractic physician, and today we have the honor of talking about the super sexy topic of irritable bowel syndrome. I love it. You always throw me for a loop when you send me the topic on Sunday night, and it's like, okay, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
I feel like we need to talk about it.
Let's talk about poop. What is IBS?
IBS is where oftentimes there's a change in stool frequency, stool form. It happens at least once a week. It's been going on for over 3 months. Most of the time a GI specialist has ruled out other GI conditions that would cause those symptoms, but it's really uncomfortable. It's not fun. And it affects like 20% of the population.
Wow, let's see, and what I think is really interesting, we were talking about this before the show, is that you have the connection of the brain and how the brain actually can impact whether or not you have IBS. Can you kind of talk about that brain to gut connection?
Well, first of all, it's really interesting. One of the main things we're now finding is that IBS can happen after a gut infection. So if someone gets the stomach flu, they don't feel well, and it actually can paralyze the nerve plexus of the gut or affect motility through the gut.
Okay.
And then we're finding that most IBS patients have depression, anxiety, or some type of anxiety tendency that then plays off of what's happening in the bowel.
Yeah, so when we talk about that, we can talk about how cyclical that can be, because I don't know if you guys have ever been in the situation, not saying I have, but maybe I have, where you don't have a bathroom when you need it.
Right.
And the anxiety that causes, you start your blood, you feel your blood pressure rising, you get the sweats, you're like, I need a bathroom now. If you have IBS and you're used to never knowing when an attack is going to come, that anxiety is just going to paralyze you.
Oh, it creates tremendous anxiety in social situations, as we were talking about before coming on, going to work, you're starting a new job. If you have to run to the bathroom, it's really unpleasant. Yeah. And it can create tremendous anxiety for those that suffer with it. So yeah.
So a lot of times then too, you're going to pull away because you don't want to be in those situations. So then you isolate a little bit more. You're like, I don't really want to leave my house, which then can trigger even more depression effects and stuff. So how interesting that these are combined when I never would have put the two together.
Right, exactly. And it's a really interesting condition. We know so much about IBS now. The gut microbiome changes. So microbiome was not a term that most people had heard of. Now we hear about probiotics, take probiotics for your gut health. Most of your immune system is in your gut. Well, we find in IBS, the gut bacteria are kind of pathogenic, if you want to say it that way. Think of kind of bad players, so to speak. They overgrow lots of times, then they metabolize foods that we should be able to eat, and they can create a lot of gas that can affect motility, constipation, and or diarrhea. I've talked about mast cells before. These are these immune cells typically associated with allergies. We're actually finding that IBS patients have overactive mast cells, so that can then interplay with different intolerances to foods. Okay. So someone can have a bacterial intolerance to a food, they can have like an allergy to a food, or they can just be intolerant to it. So those things are happening, and the gut becomes very sensitive to stretch in IBS patients. So they've done studies where they call it a bolus. A bolus will pass through the intestines, and you and I may not feel something, but an IBS patient will feel like a huge basketball is going through their gut.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so then you put all of that, then with the brain piece where the stress response gets overactive, then that creates the situation.
But the good news is there's hope. If you have IBS, you don't have to live with IBS. There are things that you can do. What do you offer at Gates Brain Health?
I offer a comprehensive approach to the problem. I have a lot of experience working with patients nutritionally, supporting them in that. So we do evaluations of their gut bacteria, of their food intolerances, of their brain, looking at their stress responses, the memory component, which opposes the fear center. So I look at all of that with IBS patients.
So making sure you get that comprehensive look at the brain and the gut, which is what you do so well. Dr. Gates, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. I feel like only he could make poop sound sexy, so I appreciate you being here. I knew that would get him to laugh.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Katie.
We'll be right back after this quick break.